in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs. Hi, everyone. Hi, Ruth Rominger here. Anna and Lou, we are your hosts, and we're so glad that you could join us today in whatever time zone that you're coming to us from. I know the 3 of us are spread out from the Pacific Coast to Puerto Rico to London, I believe. Yes? We have a great attendance today. We'd love to have this a conversation about the work that we're doing together. And so we will have make every effort to have space for you to be able to share your input on this work that we're doing, and we'll keep the conversation flowing beyond this few minutes that we have here. I think we're scheduled for 90 minutes, and so we will we'll use every second, and hope that this is the beginning of more conversation. So I am going to get us started here. I will start us with, I'm going to show some slides. We'll be looking at some slides through our conversation, and let me know if all looks good on your end. All right. So I'm just going to quickly set the tone here and say these are 2 wonderful colleagues of mine who are working together on a really an ecosystem project to connect people who are working to open up the capacity and access to learning and doing around systems change. And we are, we'll tell you a little bit about that project. And first I'll kind of tell you why it is that we, the Garfield Foundation, are doing this work in collaboration with other people around the world. And I will have both my co-presenters here introduce themselves when they come around with the slide. So let me see how, here we go. What we're gonna do, this is just a little bit of our journey, do a little bit of connecting up of the ideas and us as people, and then really talk about what we're doing to try and cultivate the field and practice of systems change. Talking about what we see and what we're trying to elevate as challenging the current field of practice, and what that means to all of us, and some of the pathways and inquiries that challenging and cultivating the field have opened up that are part of this larger collaboration. So just, a few phases of the work here, and feel free to let us know what you are feeling and seeing in the chat. But before we go further, I'm going to ask Lou to bring us all together here.
Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Luis Alejandro Tapia, but you may have heard Ruth and Anna call me Lou. That is a name that you will have to unlock once you get to know me. Maybe by the end of the session, folks will call me Lou. Um, so, invitation. We understand that an invitation is much more compelling than manipulation when it comes to change and transformation. I didn't rhyme that on purpose. My pronouns are he, him. I'm an Aries, Scorpio, Gemini, and my feet are in the native land of Boriquen Taino, known as Puerto Rico, currently. So, yes, I am soaking up the sun where I'm at right now. And so, I want to start with this. I want to start with this invitation. I'm going to ask someone here to please offer their voice and read this invitation. When we do that, I'm going to ask some questions and I'm going to invite you to respond to those questions. So you may notice that this will not be a TED Talk, no shade if you've ever been in a TED Talk, but this is a full on dialogue. We will have breakout rooms, we will have prompts, we will have questions, we will have dialogue. So let's start there. Can someone offer their wonderful voice and read this out loud to us?
Hello, Louis. This is Shiva here. Can I read?
Yes, please, Shiva.
Yeah, thanks. Together, we will create brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. The space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Hmm, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is by Mickey Scott Bay Jones, a brilliant Black um, woman educator, systems change practitioner. There's also a video that she put out recently where she recites this poem. And so we'll pause there because what I'd like to do is to put us into some breakout rooms, get to know each other, and answer, I would say, two questions, right? And so the first question, if Anna or Ruth can help me put this into the chat. The first one is, how are you arriving today, right? Really, how are you arriving into this space in this moment right now? Are you tired? Are you excited? Are you not here yet, right? And the second one, right? I would say the outward facing one that I'm going to ask folks to share when we come back is, what does this mean for systems change practitioners, right? If we say that these are the agreements that we are asking for folks to commit to in the work of transformation, right? If we're saying that for the work of transformation, we will work on it side by side, what does this mean to you, right? And so, how are you arriving? What does this mean for systems change practitioners? And of course, if you have more time, then I think it'd be great for folks to share what are the lines here that really resonate with you the most, right? And so I'm going to give folks 10 minutes, or maybe less, right? I'll make sure you get like a bat signal or message through the Zoom rooms to let you know how much time you have left. And then we're going to come back and just share. Maybe take some shares in the chat. Also take some shares out loud. So we'll do that now. I'm going to set up some breakout rooms. Um,
Welcome to those who are slowly coming back into the room.
Welcome back. Hey, John. Is that coffee in there? said I need some more coffee.
It's actually tea.
Tea. I love tea as well. Great. Looks like most folks are back. So let's start a queue. I'd love for folks to offer what they shared in their breakout groups.
Oh, wait, Lou, we've got a couple of rooms still holding
okay.
on for the last 12 seconds.
Okay,
so
let's
I think
do it.
some of them are, you've got 8, 7, so we've still got a few breakout rooms that are coming back into the room. So should we just give them those 5 precious seconds that they finish talking?
Great. 5 seconds of silence then.
Okay, I think that's everyone back in the room now.
Hey, Jessica, I know you. So 5 seconds ago, I basically posed the question, and I'll repeat it for folks that are now here. Anna, I also see you, so great to see you as well. Ana Gonzalez, I see you. Yeah, I would love for folks to offer what they shared with each other here in front of us, and we can start a queue. Maybe Anna, you can help me hold that queue. And I'm thinking the way we could do it is you can unmute yourself. That's one option to start talking. Another option is that you can use the raise hand function. Or you can raise your hand. Actually, that one might be a little bit harder for us to see since there's so many beautiful faces in our gallery screen. And we can also put it in the chat. And so the questions that we posed before folks went into the breakout groups were, how are you arriving? And also, what does this invitation mean for systems change practitioners? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop the words to the poem that was just read to us by Shiva into the chat. And so anyone that can start, we'd love for you to start.
I don't mind jumping in if no one else wants to go ahead of me. Right, so I did arrive late. So am I commenting on what we just discussed or on the poem?
Both and.
Okay, so I can do what we just discussed. I haven't had a chance to read the poem.
Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Marnie. So I read the statement or the concept, and I think the group thought in general it's a really healthy non-ego led position to take, and I feel like the political landscape right now is so fragmented and there are so many silos. This is like a really healthy position to take in order to kind of co-create a future which is meaningful and that will have positive impact in general. And I feel like it's a really strong statement to make, and it's like it's a really hopeful place to start a journey.
I love that. I can build on that if you're interested. I love what you just said. My name is Suzanne Bowles, and I work for a firm called Cattail Strategy, and it comes from 20 years of working in grassroots movement building, primarily as the person who is building bridges between philanthropy communities and really critically important equity and justice communities. And now I see an even more important opportunity in the conversation around systems change to actually encourage people who have been, you know, on the what they perceive as the edge of innovations, as realizing that worldview and mythology and the way that we understand ourselves in community with each other has to change in order for us to be able to create even the world that's good for all of us. I mean, equity has this wonderful lens of making sure that people who have been marginalized are at, in many cases, the center of a discussion. And when they're centered, it's like a universal accessibility. I mean, everybody benefits from equity and justice work. And I mean, it's additionally just the right thing to do. So the brave space I see as an opportunity for us to become agitated and realize our own discomfort with moving ourselves as people of privilege in many cases, which is really in many ways the only way to welcome in the transformation that we really need, which is to be able to let go of some of the things we're attached to. So that's my perspective. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, Suzanne, many. Please correct me if I'm saying it incorrectly. Yeah, I mean, what I hear you saying is that this notion of a brave space, words you use, right? You use the words discomfort, you use the word agitation, you use the words letting go, right? Things that I think do require courage, things that are different, what I would say, from what we used to, which might be a safe space, right? And I think that the words in this poem are really, I think they're really very well articulated and meant to be the words that are in the poem, in that it requires us to own this type of brave space in order to do those things together. And it will require discomfort, it will require agitation. And we also understand, which is what you articulated to us, is that when we do center equity, all of us win, right? I also see Lewis with his hands up. I wanted to pass it to you, Lewis.
Thank you.
And
Thank
then we'll
you.
keep it going.
Thank you very much, Louis. I'm Louis. And
Louis.
Louis.
Got it.
Yes. Thank you very much. We had just a wonderful conversation, Motat and me, about smoking. And this wonderful young man shared his story, how he quit smoking. And I thought, isn't that a wonderful topic to explore, how change is possible, how change that is so deeply ingrained and embodied, like smoking, is possible, and how do you quit smoking? How would you do that? And he shared that wonderful story, how he observed himself carefully, not going forcefully saying, oh, I must change and I must quit smoking. He observed himself carefully. What is it that smoking brings to my life? Where is it a source of pleasure? Where is it a source of joy? And where is it not? Where does it come into the way? And step by step, he let go of those cigarettes which were not contributing to his joy in life and the joy of the moment, according to the context and according to how he observed himself in that context, and how what he by and by realized was not really good for him, was not really contributing to his joy of living. And by he let go. And that was such a wonderful conversation, which brought us very much to the very point of, no, when we talk about change, all that language that is so forceful probably is not facilitating what we're looking for. Probably that language is getting into our way. We are not fighting for the change. We are observing carefully what is increasing our joy of living for ourselves and together. And then step by step, we let go of these things that do not contribute and enjoy what's emerging from that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I love how we have systems change, living our life as systems change. It's a very geeky thing for us to be looking at. So we have Haluk next, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, we also started our conversation by this very human question. Asked, the first question is wonderful, really, because it doesn't undermine the human elements. And we started to deepen our conversation through the word scars in this poem. When we talk about our scars, we talk about the real ourselves, the real selves, and which is not in the safe space. So we talked how it is important to build trust to make any change possible. And then we moved to the tension which exists between moving right now to change a system and the patience we need to analyze, to look beyond, to see and to analyze everything. And then we talk more about we talk more about how it is necessary to have a long-term approach to see things. And also, we were coming from different parts of the world. That's also inspiring. So that's what I want to share, basically.
Thank you so much, Haluk. I see Kathleen and then Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the platform, really interesting. And thanks for my breakout room who were kind enough to reread the poem to me as I was a bit late. Just a few observations. I think I shared these with some folks in the group, but the poem for me was really powerful in that, in the articulation of presence with respect to everyone showing up with wounds or scars, right? So this idea of tabula rasa is false, can't really start there. And that's what's brave then about the space are these empathy structures that can that can connect us in these different ways. And I've read a few treatises recently around white supremacy here in the US, dealing with it, working on dealing with it. And I am really struck by the frequency with which the written word, speed, and perfection rise to the top as ways of being or doing, and how fundamental those are actually to white supremacy. So when we are having these conversations about transformation, it's not just on paper only, right? It's not only the other, it's us and the other, which is how we get to whole, how we get to actual transformation. So just feels important for me to say that. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, Kathleen, before I pass it back to Sarah, I'm going to kind of skip a little bit because at the end of this session, we talk about co-conspiracy and co-conspirators. And I think the three things that you mentioned, right? Writing, right? Like word as like the written word as like supreme devotion, idolizing the written word, this sense of urgency, right? And not moving at the speed of trust, you know, and then this sense of perfection, right? That there's only one right way to do things, are things that take us away from our ability to co-conspire, right? And so I wanted to frame that because you already started kind of facilitating the conversation around that. So Sarah, you're on. And then I think after Sarah, we might be passing it to Ruth. Yeah.
Yeah, I pressed it because it said, this is a brave space. And I hate pressing. I hate contributing. I find it so hard. And I normally sit there listening, and I just thought, you've challenged us. I'm going to press this button just for once. And so I have, just to say thank you for challenging us to make us brave, because I sit on an awful lot of opinions and an awful lot of experience, and I never contribute because I don't like Zoom big meetings like this. So I just thought I'd say that, really. Thank you for challenging us to be brave, as well as helping other people and supporting other people to be brave.
Sarah, I'm not done challenging you yet.
Oh no.
Right. I mean, just based on what you shared, what made it possible for you to engage with this brave space? That could be something noteworthy for the work of systems change.
I think perhaps because I'm between jobs and I'm trying to challenge myself to be braver. You know, I've done so many things. I'm trying to work out where I am in the ecosystem now. And so there's a lot of pressure on you to sort of speak up, and you're not someone normally who likes pushing yourself. You like just doing the job, you know, getting on with it and making change instead of taking space in social media and big chats like this. But I thought, you know what? Let's just do it. So I've just done it. but what I've put myself into now, I don't know.
Yeah. I heard you say two things. One is that you're already working on being brave yourself, right?
Yep.
And so this is not something brand new that you're starting with. And the second was a little bit of pressure, a nudge.
Yeah, nudge.
So before I send it back to Ruth, I do see Karen. Karen, I do want to hear what you have to say, and then I'll really be passing it back to Ruth.
Thank you, Luis. I was struck by the notion of supreme devotion to words and then empathy structure, because one of the things is that my own sensitivity, and I'm a consultant and a coach and work with language as a facilitator. And I'm very conscious that people say that they're being empathetic and that they're listening, but it's a disembodied experience. And my understanding is that when I feel seen, heard, and known, I feel empathy is present. But someone telling me that they know exactly how I feel, or that they understand what I'm saying, or they hear me, is not the same as me having an embodied experience of being in that brave and what I would call a sacred space of intimacy, of being truly known. And so I just wanted to presence that, because I think this supreme devotion to words on paper and how we say that we understand empathy, I think we've become dissociated from our bodies, and we have to be able to feel it in the body to truly be present to one another, as I am to all of your faces, and particularly I'm looking at you right now, Lewis. It's, you know, the energy we can feel is what has to be represenced.
Karen, where in your body do you feel empathy?
I feel it across my chest, and I feel like when it's absent, I feel like I have to put a shield up. I feel like I have to protect something. And so I feel it in my heart and my chest, and I notice if I can't feel it, you know, I notice I'm now speaking a lot, so I notice my nervous system's activated. I work with somatics and embodied leadership. So I notice my nervous system's up, and then I start to shut down. But as I'm looking at you, I come back to feeling empathy, feeling connected. And that's where I feel it here. But if I don't feel it, I notice I shut down and try to protect something.
Well, thank you for inviting us. I'm sure there were other folks that were feeling or thinking about, well, I'm going to scratch the word thinking, that were feeling about where they feel empathy, right? And I encourage folks throughout the session to be feeling your bodies, right? We're in a room full of brilliant folks. I think high-level people, as it was described in the Catalyst 2030 advertisement, right? And so how do we get better at feeling? We're pretty good at thinking, synthesizing, consolidating. How do we get better at feeling? And also, I want to share that I lied a bit. I'm going to pass it actually to Anna, and then we're going to pass it to Ruth.
Thank you, Lou. So I think for me, there's something about what we're just about to talk about in our presentation, which is words, but systems change is also about pattern spotting. And some of the dynamics we're exploring and illuminate is what are the patterns emerging in the field. And even from this check-in, this is such an important practice for us of really connecting with people. The dynamics that are emerging were, how do we center equity? How do we remove people of privilege? There's a dynamic in that. How do we work with joy, but also discomfort? How do we both work with the shadow side, but bring in the positive with that smoking example? How do we build trust and relationships? How do we show up? How do we work with what's shadow and what scares us? But how do we also work with empathy structures? How do we work with embodied, but also with words? How do we work with us and with and ourselves and with who we are? How do we speak up, and how do we know when to listen? So there were some really interesting dynamics there in that check-in that helps us sort of say what is emerging in this field at the moment. And that's the kind of frame that we bring to this whole dialogue, is we're really curious and interested in what is the emerging field. So I'm going to hand to Ruth now, who's going to tell us a bit about our story, a bit in presentational form, about how we came to exploring this as Illuminate.
I'm challenged with all of the moving screens. So deep breath. Thanks so much, Anna and Lou, for bringing us together here and kind of connecting in with each other before we kind of go into the this is what this is about kind of presentation that I'm going to share. I want to just set the context of this particular conversation as we're all here to talk about how we can work together to accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. We're really talking about, you know, the many things that you all talked about of how we work together. And I'm hosting this session because the Garfield Foundation was recognized by the Catalyst 2030 Awards, and we're really honored to do that, to be recognized for the work that we've been doing. And what brings us here on our journey is that we started out asking the question, what would systems thinking look like in philanthropy and in social change? And how can we shift the way we operate to be part of co-creating solutions and supporting network action? And those themes have connected us to the people that we are collaborating with in the Illuminate project. And we really feel like the work that we've done over the decades of supporting systems change practice, organizing people in collaborative networks to work on a very complex issue. On that learning journey, we have met and connected with some amazing people around the world who are also on this journey. And I think because we are asking these questions and opening to learning together, it's come to the place where we are in a process of connecting as an ecosystem to help others and ourselves build this field, if we may call it that. So I'm going to just start with letting Anna sort of tell us the beginning of this emergent project that has become called the Illuminate Project. And she was a big part of getting it kicked off. So,
yeah, but I want to say that I guess this is one side of the story. Like, we all have our own stories of connecting and weaving together. And so this is from my angle, from my place. And I'm actually spent the morning, because it's a bank holiday here in the UK, reading Braiding Sweetgrass, which is having a moment at this moment. And, you know, the idea that all our stories weave together. So this is just my story of how it started to weave together. So it's one perspective. But back in 2016, actually, when we were trying to explore as for the future, what would be the field, what would be an offer to systems change? We were seeing the need to build more capacity, seeing that in order to change systems, we will need to change the way we think about the world. And we were saying, how do we put a learning offer out into the world that was helping people engage with systems change? So this is back in 2016. But as part of that, we recognized, as we were exploring what would the market need before we created the School of Systems Change, we realized that to put just a learning offer out into the world without connecting to the field wasn't really in line with our systemic philosophy. We didn't need just more of our own thinking. We needed to actually do this in a really connected, integrated, to create a bigger whole. So we called it the fried egg strategy, where we said that if we were trying to create our little piece of the egg, and not necessarily centering ourselves, but recognizing that we had to be part of an ecosystem, we had to be part of a bigger whole. And so in 2018, we convened 25, I think it was about 25 people in Watson Island from different people, very much from the people we knew and the people they knew. It's not the whole field. It was just a group of people who were interested, not just in systems change, but were also interested in growing a field. What does it mean to cultivate and grow a field? And from that perspective, we came up with some pathways, and this is Ruth actually doing her brilliant graphic facilitation at Watson Island, where we were looking at different pathways to how we might cultivate that field. Yeah, keep it on that side, Ruth, for now. We were looking at how do we curate knowledge, how do we bring together lots of different knowledge, and also recognizing that knowledge wasn't just our own thinking, but we were just talking in the check-in there about different ways of knowing. It's not just about academic ways of knowing, it was practitioner ways of knowing, it was people doing the work. How do we create a learning support system? How do we create a system to support people to learn, to connect across different infrastructures? How do we engage new people, and really looking at what diversity means? How do we recenter diversity, recognizing that a lot of us were coming from a place of perhaps privilege in this area? And how do we also shift and attract funding? And how do we make sure that funding is also part of the agenda? And so a lot of funders were also in the room who are in partnership with us rather than separate. And we then looked at how do we create a stewardship group as well? How do we steward this and cultivate it? But it took us a couple of years to even get moving, because that moving from a seed, from an idea, from relationships into initiative took a while. And the next slide is really what we also did was we also asked everyone, what is their definition of systems change? What do they mean by systems change? And we recognized that there were hundreds of different definitions. Everyone we asked had a different definition. And so here is just one kind of version of, pick your own version from the different words that people came up with. You know, it's about the shifting, changing, different mindsets or patterns or dynamics or relationships in order to address some of these root causes, these complex living systems, equity issues, through, you know, intentional, purposeful, deliberate interventions. And there was lots of different ways that people were intervening, with the outcome of creating, ensuring, go forward again. It's okay. In the need to create kind of social outcome, positive, compassionate societies. And I think something that we've learned since starting this is also really recentering equity and healing to this. So that's kind of where we were in 2018. And since then, we kind of was the starting of a network to start connecting different people across the field. So I think that was where I was pausing to hand on to, who was next? Yeah, so I guess this was also me, wasn't it? So this was the beginning, to a place to meet, connect, deepen our understanding. And then so today it's really great to have you 71 people on board on this chat to also learn from how you see we need to build the capacity. What are you seeing as the practice? And I'm really starting to broaden out that conversation. And we have questions like, you know, what other fields are we bridging or braiding or connecting to? How are we looking at the role of funders, and how are these fields interweaving together? So that's what we bring to you today. So Lou, was it over to you for the next bit?
Yeah, but I'm going to pass it actually back to Ruth. In that Ruth and yourself have actually been part of Illuminate for a much longer time than I have been. So Ruth, you can start us off, and then, you know, we can kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's really perfect for me to be in this conversation to talk about this project, because as Anna said, this is a weaving, and it's a sensing each step of the way with the other people that are bringing a whole other life experience and work experience and framing of this work. And so that we are trying to walk the talk, so to speak, of being in relationship and letting emergence happen. And we're at a place in the work where we're trying to figure out how that grows. So we did decide, I guess it's now been a couple of years, that in order to create some kind of infrastructure that could support the ecosystem of systems change, leaders, capacity builders to really evolve together, evolve the field, and grow the possibility that others can connect and learn, and have it a continuous process, that organizing as a collaborative network, which is something that Garfield has been tinkering with over the last couple of decades, as a way to create a very adaptive structure for and a shared governance for some complex systems change effort. And so we have been on this journey of figuring out what the different nodes are of that collaborative network, and doing some listening to the field, and evolving the queries, the inquiries, and the pathways through those conversations with the field. We've got a number of different projects that have been seeded and are growing in this collaboration. We want to talk a little bit about it and really hear from everyone here what you really see as some of the other ideas that need to be in this conversation and in the network, and how to grow it in a way that really is honoring the different approaches, as well as deepening relationships in the work. But importantly, how does all of our work add up to something far greater because we are in relationship and working together? So this was some of the themes that came up as Anna referred to us going through this birthing process of what is it that's really we want to center in this effort to work together. And these were, I've pulled these from some of our positioning and discussions about what we're coming together for. So you can see where we've taken a bit of a shift from sort of what people used to talk about when they talked about systems change in the mainstream, if you could call it that, the dominant field 5-10 years ago. But this is the field, I would say at this point. This is where the field really is at its growing and learning edge. So, you know, what Lou, you joined us recently when we were going through some of these investigations of ourselves and of the field. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of how we've come into this process where we are?
Yeah, I'd love to. If we could go back one slide and then move back to this one. Right. So words, right? This is the mission and the vision that Illuminate kind of was working towards, I believe, at the same moment that I came to help. And so what I want to bring your attention to are the words just, equitable, and regenerative. Just, equitable, and regenerative, right? So we're talking about justice, we're talking about equity, and we're talking about a future where all of us exist. All of us. Cis, straight, white, black, disabled, etc. Right? Let's go back to the move one slide forward also. It's one step ahead, right? We're talking about abolition, right? Which is the dismantling, the disruption, the ending of a system. We're talking about action. We're talking about practice, right? We're also talking about connection. And so a lot of my work, and I would say a lot of my work is really asking some good questions, right? And not questions that are leading, not questions that are loaded, but real questions, right? So if we are saying that we are looking to abolish inequitable systems, and we are also the ones naming ourselves as systems change practitioners, then how do we practice abolition, right? What does it mean for us to be radical? And not radical, I think, in the way that many folks imagine it to mean, but radical in the way that Angela Davis teaches us, right? Which means to be grabbing things from the root, the actual Latin word of radical, the Latin root of radical, right? And we understand that that change happens at the scale of relationships, which is connection, right? Right. So why connection is the biggest part of the work that we've done thus far, right? And so I think it's been interesting, fascinating. It's been a hard journey thus far, and it continues to be. But it's also been something that has allowed us to heal in ourselves, right? And so I think a word that's not there, but it kind of is this notion of fractals, right? Grace Lee Boggs us Grace Lee Boggs teaches us that in order to transform the world, we transform ourselves. And so there's been a lot of work that we've been doing to really transform the notions that exist about change in our own minds and our own hearts, in order for us to really hold what change can look like for the rest of us, including the field itself. Right? And so, of course, right, not throwing away Western science and only relying on one thing, but really thinking about what does it mean to center justice and equity, right? If we are saying that we are the creators, the cultivators, the folks that are nourishing a future where all of us exist, then how do we name that and apply it now? Right. I want to check in. Anna, do you also want to share some things about our journey to here?
Yeah, I think we're trying to touch into, I think the journey is also in conversation. So one of the difficulties is how do we do this exploration in a way that mirrors these kind of principles and questions as well. And that's one of the challenges, the kind of idea of fractals and the idea of living the change. And so we've also been kind of grappling with that. And so I guess there's also an invitation to you. I'd really love, in the last half an hour that we've got left, I know we've got about 67 people now on the call, but to really share with what you're seeing as well. If these words are resonating with you, what are you seeing as the field and on the edges? So I think, you know, how do we take an approach that is learning and touching and looking at where things are emerging is one of my core questions is supporting Illuminate at the moment. I think we're trying to grapple with as well. So I think it's sort of, these are not easy questions to be working with, I think is one of the things we kind of been looking at. So I guess that's my kind of, the process is also just as important as the concepts of doing it.
Thanks,
so what do we want to
Anna.
do for the last half an hour? I'm just conscious we have half an hour, and I would love to get a bit of a collection from people as well. So I wonder if we need to kind of invite that, maybe a buzz session with people sooner rather than later. So kind of another quick breakout or something. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that I was feeling the same thing. I'd love to hear what others have to say about how we do this work as people who have named ourselves systems change practitioners, and honor the challenges that we're seeing and the inquiry together. So we could do some breakout groups, and I'd love to just hear what people are seeing in their work, in this, in really being part of this, our own change process as we build space for others.
And so I'm going to set up the breakouts for about 10 minutes. And what I'd love for people to come back, hopefully I've set them up so they're new configurations of people, fingers crossed I'm getting good enough at Zoom to do that. But what I'd love is everyone to commit to maybe sharing one of their kind of key things that they're emerging, one or two. So in the chat, commit to when you come back, because this is what we really want to collect as Illuminate. We want to collect what people are learning, what people are seeing. So maybe one insight, make sure from your group you do feedback in that time, because that's really useful feedback mechanism for us in terms of what we're doing here. So yeah, should we open the rooms and then see what people are kind of exploring? So what's the question, Lou? What are they seeing as the edge or the emerging field of practice, the practice, not just the concepts, the actual practicing of this stuff?
Yeah, I think, you know, you know how sexy I think the word emergence is. And so I think that, you know, what is emerging for you is the right question.
Great.
Yes, and please use the chat to share your ideas as well as with each other.
Hey, Brendan.
Very good facilitation, Bruce. I love your grounding of and mirroring that. Very nice. Thanks for
Trying to making sure everyone's assigned. So bear with me. Some things technical are here. I'm going to fill up rooms with a few people in. You can hear my children in the background giving us the future of systems change there.
Hey, children.
Yeah.
I want to.
Welcome back, everyone. Coming back slowly but surely. We've got another. So do prepare your insights for the chat. I do want to hear, even if you don't raise your hands, I'd love to harvesting the seeds of your insights. So please do write it down as we welcome people back.
We apologize for yanking people out of such juicy conversations. We wish that Zoom would offer a softer, gentler touch than just closing the rooms shut.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back into the conversations. So I'm just gonna share a few last slides, but as you're doing it, I know there were at least 14 active rooms. So I want to see at least 14 insights, some juicy seeds of your conversation. This is really, really important to us to collect up what you're seeing as emerging, because as part of our work streams in Illuminate, we're trying to do inquiry. So the weaving of learning at the top of what we do as Illuminate at the top here is one of the most important things. So we're trying to do that through some action research and inquiries into these questions. So without harvesting questions from what you're doing, we can't know what they are. Trying to look at how do we develop a community platform. So please go onto our website and start signing up to that. But we also have nodes of practice. So we have a funders node, which Ruth is a part of. We have an equity and healing node to try to center this work and understand it. We have nodes of capacity builders, so people who are running capacity building programs. And we have regional nodes. We're looking at how we go from New Zealand, Australia, to places in Africa, through to North America and across Europe at the moment. And we're interested in how we might connect into other regional nodes. But one of the key thing about this is how do we weave this learning together, and how do we understand what the emerging field of system change is? So please do share your insights in the chat. I really want to see them coming through, at least 14 from each of those conversations. But there's 52 of you, so I'm hoping more. And because we are only a small group of initiators, I don't think we're the full crew of the field. So we are also interested in how do we connect with more and more people and more institutes and organizations and individuals who are doing systems change. So this is just the list of who we are. So myself from the school, and Ruth from Garfield, and Lou has been working with us in Illuminate, but we're interested in connecting with more organizations, either as partners or sponsors or co-conspirators, or in numerous different ways to connect with the field. So I've only seen a few comments in the chat here. So we're gonna just spend the last 10 minutes, either raise your hand or please, I invite you to share what your insight is from that conversation. We really want to hear it. We're going to record this chat and we'll pick out some of the themes. So either raise your hand of an insight of what's emerging. What are you seeing as emerging as systems change practice? And it's really important to us that this is a practice. So I don't know, Lou, if you want to pull out some of those themes, or if somebody has their hand raised, or I can just hear my children killing themselves in the background. You know, that's
well,
fine.
I'll bring attention to the chat. I see, oh, great. Brendan, I was just going to read what you wrote, but I see your hands raised. Brendan, please share.
You would read it better because your voice is much more melodious than mine. No, I'll just say it was interesting because our conversation, all four of us really focused on the concept of equity and marginalization, and how while there is kind of an emergence of, I think, an interest and focus and an honesty around these ideas. There is still very much embedded in most of the work that we do and see these power structures. And so in the end, what we often see is marginality, not mostly nominate. If they are included, for the most part, it's nominal, and the structures aren't really set up to the point where the most marginalized, the ones who could benefit most from the initiatives, are really the key core decision makers. I mean, there are some structures that allow that. It's not that the structures don't exist, but the power barriers to moving for that space, I don't think it's just a mindset. I think it's also a lot of ego, and embedded power structures are, I think, very difficult to break. So that was one thing we talked about.
Brendan, thank you. Robert, I see you in the chat. Robert says we work on operating leverage for systems change. Robert, can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by leverage and the 18 dimensions of it?
Sure. So at Crowd Doing, we've identified that there are different dimensions of leverage for systems change, the history. For example, Linux has proven out service learning, skilled volunteerism, and micro leadership as an example of their leverage sources. And we've identified for each of 18 dimensions of leverage and systems change what case studies of the last 1,000 years exist that we can understand those leverage points from. And then for each social innovation we lead, we've had 500,000 hours of volunteer time from volunteers in 25 countries collaborating on these, that for each social innovation area we say, how do we connect enough of the leverage point dimensions in to reach the scale and scope of the challenge if we are to be successful, so that, if we are to get to level 2 or level 10 of it, that we start to dissolve the problem because of the way in which we're scaling the social innovation clusters and combinations of social innovations. So that's true whether you're talking about a circular economy of catastrophe prevention or a circular economy of stuff. It's true whether you're talking about AI as a leverage point, or whether you're talking about in-kind financing and or liquidity as a homelessness prevention through liquidity diversification mechanisms. Basically, you could say for each of our initiatives, whether it's wildfire prevention or mental health in attention restoration theory, democratization, that there are underutilized leverage points in the world, and we see the opportunity of systems change as connecting all of the leverage points together that are necessary to reach the scope of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm just looking at some really interesting stuff coming out of the chat as well, like how are different fields flirting with each other. The design, I quite like that. The social with the analytical fields, the flirting with the design, with the systems change. But also there's quite a lot about these micro practices and fractals and how do we work with the small side of things. And also your question about leverage and the scale. And there goes my children jumping around. And the reality of this work. And also, how do we create the plumbing for field building? And I think that's the great question. We really are trying to work with that question ourselves. I quite like that, the plumbing, the infrastructure, the connecting and the weaving, the organic metaphors around that. So those are a few things I'm pulling out in the chat as well, Lou.
There's an interesting comment also about, let's get back here, of the siloing, I'll say, of the different issue areas that people are working in, and how we see territoriality around those spaces. And I wonder, Kathleen, if you want to say anything more about that. I think it is a challenge for the kind of learning and weaving across issues.
gosh, I wish I had something interesting to say that would help advance the conversation. It feels like a place where I am very much, I would very much benefit from wisdom of others. This is very indicative of the kind of challenge I'm working with right now, with federal agencies, with NGOs, and with funders, right? And maybe Ruth, a question is different than the one I put in there, is something like, it sort of goes to this inside outside transformation piece. You know, you have to be the change that you're wanting to see externally. How do you go about that, whether you are a consultant or a foundation or an NGO, in such a way that leaves your identity intact, but also allows you to evolve along with the world that's evolving around you, if not with you? I don't know. I get existential really fast, and that's not what I want. I'm actually more interested in the question Anna was asking about, how do we architect this? But this natural climate solutions thing is a very clear example I have in my practice, where I have climate change, energy folks, conservation folks. They kind of get it on the natural climate solutions, but not really. And and whether or not you like that substantively, take that off the table, just as an example of an emergent construct. How do we build more of those with less loss of identity?
I'm going to leave this open for people to respond.
And Suzanne has her hand. Suzanne has her hand up as well. Do you want to come in, Suzanne?
I'd love to quickly just reflect what Kathleen said and say something I feel is probably very radical to some, but I see as the sort of the thread across all the different sectors. And one of the biggest areas of learning that all the sectors need to do mutually is that all the issues of gender and climate and health and everything, when you come back down to it, it's the communities themselves that are going to have to either demand for the things that are needed or make changes that are in context locally. And so to me, it seems that the bigger move that needs to happen across sectors is to actually reorient as much as possible to a more complex global ethos of supporting communities and arriving at what they've determined is best. But that's just very radical, right? And not going to help us necessarily unless we can just incentivize more circular movement through all those silos.
I want to call out and acknowledge a comment from Ana Claudia just about the language and, you know, the fact that mostly it's the native English speakers that are expressing themselves. And that's such also a real challenge in our really hearing and listening to what people are expressing when there's different vocabulary from different languages. And we really need to work on how we can communicate in nonverbal ways and in different languages and different breakouts. So it does create barriers that we need to overcome.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Anna. And then I also see Maria with a hand up.
Yes. I believe we were. It's Maria Boa, right? We were working together in the group, and it looks like a Portuguese, a Mexican, and a Canadian. They come together and they start to speak in English. But then we realized that we could speak also in Spanish, because all of us could speak in Spanish, and we could also speak in Portuguese, because somehow we all speak some Portuguese. And what we were sharing together is that we never see people that are native English entering in a situation like this, expressing themselves in a different language. And I think it's something that it's a kind of experience that is needed to really tune the sensitivity to what does that mean, the struggle to try to say something and try to express yourself. And as Maria pointed out, sometimes the same word have very different connotations in different cultures. And we are not able to have that kind of sensitivity. So the language still works as exclusionary. process. And the invitation we want to open is, please try to do something radically different and have this experience that we have every day.
Thank you, Anna. Mario, did you want to say something? We just have kind of a minute or two left.
Just maybe adding quickly, it's like, okay, language is just like an expression of our mental models as societies, as persons. So part of the answer to the previous question is, how do we share more our mental models and really to have common meanings and understandings and relationships to really acknowledge common aspirations of the world that we want for all. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, you know, we could keep going. I think we've just got it started in this conversation. I know it's been 90 minutes and thank you so many of you for joining us. I think some of these questions about how do we talk to each other, how do we connect through different languages, different mental models, different scales and fractals, putting the plumbing together, connecting, how do we put the infrastructure, and I'd use the organic languages there, weaving of different plant structures together. So I think let's try to find ways to continue this conversation, I think is my leaving. So thank you all for joining. I don't, Ruth or Lou, do you want to say anything to close? But I really appreciate you all coming, and we'll take the chats, and if you want to leave anything on your way out of a reflection, please do. Lou or Ruth, do you want to close in any way?
Excuse me, may I ask very short question?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just if, for me, it's very simple. And I study economics, I work in big corporation, but now for me, the issue is to look for companies not focused on money maximization, not focused in developing competitive advantages to beat others. This is another game. So this game is about to be honest, to know yourself, to put your needs on the table, and be honest. How can you develop this and at the end of the month pay your bills? So the invitation is there. I would love if somebody else could or would like to develop this idea also.
Thank you. This is the tension of the current system and the new system of the economic model and paying our bills. So thank you for that provocation. And we do have to end because it's on time. Lou or Ruth, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you everyone for the extra minute that you've given us. The conversation does not end here. Please don't let it end here.
Thank you. Bye all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Gracias.
Merci.
Gracias.
Yep.